Black Egyptians, the Black Cushites of Nubia, and the Black North African Hamitic tribes from the lineage of Put in the territory of Libya. So do we have proof that Canaan's brothers were black? So what about their other brother Put, who lived in modern-day Libya? 1st century AD, Roman commander Silius Italicus described the black Libyan Berbers with the term Negra, which meant black. Now, this was 600 years before Islam existed or any black Muslim war existed. In 6th century AD, Roman poet Flavius Chrysonius Corippus uses the phrase facies negroque, colorist, meaning faces or appearance of black color, to describe the North African Libyan Puttite Berbers in his literary work Johannes. For centuries, the curse of Canaan story has been taught incorrectly by the European Catholic Church and modern Talmudic Judaism, which many black people have believed even until today. The question is, why would Catholics and Jews teach that black people are suffering from the curse of Canaan? Truth is, the baptized people in Africa were naturally practicing Hebraic customs without even knowing the English word Hebrew, Jew, or Judaism. In addition, the oral history of their migration from Egypt to Israel and from Israel back into Africa by way of Egypt and Sudan was passed down from the oldest person in the village going back generations upon generations. Now, does this sound like the biblical history of the Canaanites? Of course not. In real history, not too much evidence is found in regards to the identity and current whereabouts of the children of Canaan. This information has been covered up for a reason. But as Yeshua HaMashiach, whom the world knows as Jesus Christ, said in Luke 8:17, "For nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, and nothing concealed that will not be made known and brought to light." Now, with that being known, the Pygmy tribes in Africa are a group of people who were once very numerous in the land of Ham until the Bantus Negro Israelite expansion into Africa. The Pygmy tribes in Africa have always been overshadowed and ruled over by the other great Hamite kingdoms of Africa. This includes the Libyan Put Empire, the Egyptian Mizraim Empire, the Nubian Kush kingdoms that ruled over ancient Egypt, and Northeast Africa. So if the Bantus people are not Hamites, and the Pygmy tribes in Africa are not accounted for in African Hamite history, then who are they? The only people they could possibly be are the children of Canaan. Now here's where it gets interesting. Pygmy tribes like the Batwa or Twa Pygmies in Africa were found to have the same Egyptian Canaanite Pygmy Bes god in their pantheon of pagan gods. They also knew of the Pygmy Egyptian Phoenician Canaanite god Ptah Sokar, aka Pataikos. Coincidence? In the Efe Pygmy language, the word Ilani or Ila corresponds to energy, force, power, or strength. The ancient Hebrew word El, meaning God, corresponds to strength and power. It consists of the Aleph, ox, and the Lamed, shepherd staff, pictographed Hebrew letters similar to the Sumerian, Babylonian, Assyrian word Elu or Il for God. In the first dynasty around 3150 BC, Pygmies served and worked directly for the pharaoh, including the royal household of the Egyptians. Now, were these Pygmy people Caucasoid? Of course not, because there are no indigenous Caucasian tribes in Africa today. Now, many Pygmy skeletons were found buried in lesser tombs around that of the tombs of the pharaohs. In fact, a proportion of dwarfs in the Egyptian royal cemetery of the first dynasty kings such as Djer, Hora, Aha, or Narmer were so numerous that many believed that the Pygmies were brought into Egypt from the land of Canaan. Back then, the Pygmies' purpose in the Old Kingdom and the Middle Kingdom would be seen as a form of servitude to the Egyptian, Libyan, and Nubian Kushite kings, just like the curse of Canaan states. According to Egyptian history, the black Pygmies of Africa were brought into Egypt as jewelers, tailors, cupbearers, zookeepers, fortune tellers, astrologers, and entertainers. Egyptian texts from around 2300 BC refer to the Pygmies as little men from the land of trees and spirits at the foot of the mountains of the moon. In Central Africa and the African Great Lakes region, the Batwa Pygmies are regarded as the ancient dwellers of the forest. They are also known as the keepers of the forest who dwell near the mountains. In ancient biblical times, Egyptian King Pepi II Neferkari, around 2200 BC, sent an expedition into Central Africa, the same place that many Pygmy tribes still dwell today, such as the Congo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Zaire, and returned with a dancing dwarf known as Akka. Now, in the pyramid text during the 6th Egyptian dynasty ruler Pepi I, it was declared that, quote, "He who is between the thighs of Nut is the pygmy who danceth like the god and who pleaseth the heart of the god before his great throne." Now the black pygmies used in ancient Egypt were often used to dance for special occasions and religious festivals. Their god, Bes, was a dwarf god and was known for good things like fighting off evil spirits or fertility, so he was always associated with music, dancing, and sexual pleasure. Today, the pygmy people in Africa still enjoy dancing as they are a happy people who are not governed by any specific laws like the Hebrew Mosaic Law, the Roman Law, or the Arab Sharia Law. By the New Kingdom period, from 1550 BC to 1070 BC, they would appear in Egyptian writings as a people of ridicule and abuse. In the Bible, the Pharaoh of Egypt gave King Solomon the Canaanite city of Gezer as a dower gift for his daughter's hand in marriage. In the Amarna letters, the Canaanites sent distress letters to the Egyptian rulers for help against the chief of the Hebrew, which many believe was Joshua.
Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof. As the camel, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the coney, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you. And the hare, because he cheweth the cud, but divideth not the hoof, he is unclean unto you.
Now, many Spanish historians say that the word España, meaning Spain in Spanish, comes directly from the hidden word Sephanim, Sephania, or Sephania, which is a Phoenician Canaanite word which means land of the rabbits. Now, they say that the black pygmy Twa people were the first people who named the land of Spain Sephanim or Sephania. Now, here's where it gets deep. The Hyrax coney rabbit-like animal in Hebrew is called Shapan, or Shapanim, aka rock rabbit. It is only seen in Africa and Israel. Now, more than half of the world's rabbits and hares are seen in southwestern Europe, such as Spain and North America. Rabbits are different but very similar in appearance to the Hyrax seen in ancient Canaan or Israel. One can see the obvious differences by looking at the ears. Now, the Twa pygmies named Spain as Sephanim, Sephania, or Sphania, the only way they could have known to call Spain this Hebrew term would be by associating it with the Hebrew word for a rabbit-like animal familiar to their ancestors' word for a Hyrax coney in their ancient language, the Phoenician script, which is identical to ancient Hebrew. The root word of Isephanim or Sephania is the Hebrew Strong's word 8227a, Shapan, Shapanim, or Shepanim. Now, this proves that the Twa pygmies living in southwestern Europe were speaking a language very close to Paleo-Hebrew, although they were not Hebrews. This is the ancient Canaanite language Phoenician. But wait, there's more. Now, according to ancient historians like Tacitus, Pliny, and Claudian, the pygmies were the first people encountered by whites in the British Isles and Scotland. Now, these small black pygmies who were experts in alchemy, fortune-telling, astrology, and good fortune would spark the leprechaun myth in Ireland and Scotland. Now, the Abattoir pygmies, or Twa pygmies, call very tall people Negroes, or Langwani. In their ancient Malawian tales, the Abattoir pygmies speak of a time when their people were numerous throughout the land of Ham, or Africa, and how giants who were the first offsprings of winged spirits had sexual relations with the people living in Africa. The Munanji Mountains and its forest reserves are believed to be the first home of the Abattoir people. Ironically, Egyptian texts from around 2300 BC refer to the pygmies as little men from the land of trees and spirits at the foot of the mountains of the moon, and it just so happens that most pygmy tribes across the world live near mountains and in dense forests. In pygmy mythology, there is an account of a Garden of Eden, or a story similar to it, as well as a creator and a moral savior like Christ. There is even a flood story amongst the pygmy tribes. So that the pygmies learned about the messianic prophecy of Christ from the Hebrew Israelites living in Canaan, that they know about Joshua and Moses. I consider these amazing facts. In the pygmy creation story, God makes man modeled from the dirt of the earth. breathes life into man, he becomes alive and is called Efe. It's the same name as the Efe pygmy tribes in the Congo. So God told Efe to have children, and he gave Efe seed dominion over everything on earth. Mankind did not have to work at this time and was immortal. The only thing God forbade them to do was to stay away and not eat from the tahu tree. This was the first law that God commanded mankind not to do. Now Efe, his wife, and children obeyed this law. And after some time, Efe had ancestors who populated the earth. And one day, a pregnant woman convinced her husband to eat of the fruit of the tahu tree. The pygmy man didn't want to eat from the tree, but the woman said it was a silly old law. The two argued about it, and eventually the man gave in.